Today on Strategy Simplified, we have another installment of our new coach interview series. These are conversations to hear from someone who's been through the process themselves, one of our coaches. We'll learn about their background, journey to consulting, what they're up to now, and their case coaching philosophy. Up next is Ryan Smith, an ex-BCGer who left the firm to move into a strategy role in finance. I hope you enjoy the discussion. We are excited today to have with us Ryan Smith here on the Management Consulted Strategy Simplified podcast. Ryan, how are you doing today?
I'm all right. How are you?
Very good. Glad to have you on. Excited to have the community learn a little bit more about you and your path. Would love to kick us off with some fun questions, get to know you a little bit more personally. So Ryan, to start us off today, what is a career that you could have gone into but didn't?
Thinking back during my first year in business school, as I was going through the interview process with, the consulting firms and things, I was also looking for, other plans outside of consulting just to kind of diversify my options. And I was put into contact with a company that funds search funds. And so they were looking for, people to, look for a company to acquire, run it for a couple of years and exit. And at the time, I didn't really know anything about that. And so I was in talks with this company and, I was getting more and more fascinated as I was hearing more about it. But, about halfway through the talks, I got the offer from BCG and, that was my dream job. So I decided to take that and not really continue anymore with the search fund. But, that could have been really fascinating. I've thought about it a couple times since, but I would say, that's something that, I don't know if they would have accepted me or not, but that's something that, I think about from time to time.
Absolutely. So I'm intrigued to dive in there a little bit more, but before we get there, let's get one more personal question in here, which is, would you be willing to share with us what's an item on your bucket list?
Yeah. So I love cars. I've loved cars ever since I was a kid. And so, an item on my bucket list is I really want to drive, an exotic car like on a track. And I've been meaning to go to the Porsche Experience Center in Atlanta, where you can take one of their cars out and drive on the track. I've been wanting to do that for a while now, but I just haven't had the chance. But that's still high on my list, and hopefully I'll be able to do that soon.
Absolutely. Oh, I love that. Thank you for sharing. So let's dive back where you were just a second ago. Tell us a little bit more about your pathway, pre-BCG and kind of what got you there to join the firm.
Yeah, most definitely. So, I'll start, pretty far back. I'm originally from the Maryland area. I grew up there, stayed local for undergrad, went to UMD. And while I was there, I started like a small laundry business where I pick up and deliver, students' laundry. And I ran that for, a couple of years while I was in school, and then, post undergrad for a while too. And then after a little bit, I was, looking for a change, and I was talking to one of my good friends, and he was in the recruiting industry. And he was telling me about it, and it seemed interesting. Like a lot of client engagement, which is one thing I really liked about, having my own small business, and the, commission-based structure was something that was fascinating to me too. So I decided to make the jump there. I did, recruiting in DC and in Charlotte for the next few years. And, when I was in Charlotte, I was, looking for, something else, something, that was more kind of strategic, more kind of cerebral. And I actually stumbled across the show House of Lies. And I was like, wow, that's a really interesting, job. I should, look into that. And, I looked into it, was really fascinated at the options, within consulting, and decided to, really go for it. So, I just hunkered down. I, studied for, the GMAT, did all those things, and, went to Darden for business school, UVA, and decided to try my hand at consulting. And luckily it all worked out, and I landed at BCG's DC office, which was a great experience.
So were you lucky enough to get that coveted summer internship and try it out, or was it a 2-year recruiting process for you?
Yeah, I was one of the lucky ones. So I did get the summer internship. So I got to try it out for those 10 weeks, loved it, and, was looking forward to starting after my second year.
Mm-hmm. When you think back to your own recruiting process, what's something that helped make you successful in that journey, you think?
Honestly, I think, the biggest thing was being able to, be myself. That allowed me to, really connect with the company representatives, and really forge strong relationships with them. A lot of the people I met during my recruiting process, I'm still in contact with and I still talk to. It was tough to kind of fight the urge to be so, buttoned up and things like that when going to the recruiting events. But, being able to kind of be myself, let my personality shine through, I think was really huge.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So for folks with a similar pathway, wanting to break into MBB, what can they do to set themselves apart in the process?
Yeah. Thinking back to my journey, the big catalyst was going to business school, right? And, granted, that's not really an option for a lot of people, depending on the stage in their life and stage in their career, to be able to, take 2 years off and do that. So if that's not an option, I would say the next best thing is to, just network and talk to people, just do it, nonstop, right? I have a lot of people book sessions, through Management Consultant with me where we don't do casing. They just ask me questions for an hour. And I really do think that's a great use of time. Get to know as many people, in the industry as possible, pick out the firms you want to work at, just reach out. People are happy to talk to you. And then, after that, what I would do is I would craft your story so that your, prior experience really meshes well with what these companies are looking for. You'll find that it doesn't have to be anything business related necessarily if you're making a big pivot like I did. We all have a lot of experiences that are highly applicable to consulting. And if you craft your story the right way, they will see that too.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Absolutely. I love how you talked there about the opportunity to just have open question time with your clients, the opportunity to get these coaching services, which are outside of the case interview process, because there's a lot to be learned there about what is consulting? Is this the right space for me? What are the firms that I might be interested in? What might be a good fit for me? And thinking through the broader application and interview process. So for folks that are just getting into the space, just getting involved and checking this out, how do you introduce them to consulting? If somebody asks you that open question of, well, Ryan, tell me about what a consultant does. What is the day? What does the week feel like? Can you talk us a little bit through that?
Yeah, most definitely. The high level, the job itself can differ greatly depending on what kind of project you're on, right? These firms work in every single space, there is. So you can have projects that are, quantitative heavy, qualitative, things like that. And they can run the whole gamut. But, when I think about a typical day, a lot of times people ask about, the travel and kind of what that's like. So I generally give them what a travel Monday would look like. So normal Monday for me, I would wake up, grab my bag, which I always pack the night before because I'm not a morning person and, I never had enough time to do that. So I pack it the night before. I would head to, the airport or the train station. I always had projects that were within a 2 to 3 hour travel time window. So that was always, pretty manageable. So, on the way to the train station or airport and while on the train or plane, that's where I would take the time to, really plan out the week. I would see, when the calls and meetings were, when we would, brief the partner on progress on the project. Any, kind of deliverables that I had to do, right? And then I would kind of back into what my week should look like, what I should get done that Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and so on. That would, depending on the week, that would take a little bit of time. But, with any of the extra travel time I had, I would just begin working on whatever it may be. It could be, slides. It could be, analysis. Analysis can take the form of, it could be Excel or Alteryx, depending on how quantitative your case is. Or it could even be more qualitative. There were plenty of times I had kind of like interview modules where I would just talk to, 20 different stakeholders and try to pull out common themes and things like that. It really just depends on what you're tasked with. By this point, I would be, getting to the client site, and, I'd get to the client site. Normally we would convene as a team, talk about what the week looked like, talk about each of our individual plans, just so we're all aligned. And then, from then on, I would just, keep doing the same stuff, analysis, decks, meetings, whatever it may be. And then, after that, I would either head to the hotel and finish up, or there's generally at least, like a team event, each week. And it could either take the form of, a workout, a dinner, something else, like whatever it may be. And that's, can be like a typical day.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So when you think back to your time at BCG, what sticks out as something that you really enjoyed?
Yeah. I think, the team dynamic is something that I really miss. In my role now, obviously, we have like a team and things like that, but it's a little bit different when, you have a team of like 5 to 6 and you're away from home and, essentially you're all there to work on one thing. You become very, very close and tight knit. And, it really it felt to me kind of like sports, like feeling like you're on like a sports team, like being that close, looking out for each other. And that camaraderie is something that, I really, really enjoyed.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Absolutely.
We'll be right back after this quick message. Maximize your chances of landing a top 10 consulting offer by joining Black Belt, Management Consultant's premium case prep program. In Black Belt, you receive one-on-one mentorship and prep support from a former McKinsey, Bain, or BCG consultant like the one you're hearing from today. Your coach will develop a personalized plan for you and guide you through drill-based coaching sessions. Black Belt also includes expert resume and cover letter edits, because case prep is only so good if you don't get the interview. 80% of Black Belts land offers, which is why it's the world's most effective consulting prep program. If you're ready to quit wasting time in your prep process, join today. Learn more and register at the link in this episode's show notes. Now, let's get back to the show.
You spent a few years at the firm, mm-hmm. and then decided to leave BCG. What made you decide to step away, and what have you been up to since? Yeah.
So I'll start with the second piece. What I've been up to since. I currently work at Fannie Mae in their strategy and insights group. So I just kind of lead internal strategy projects, at Fannie Mae. Really enjoy it and have a great team that I'm working with, a lot of ex-consultants actually. Mm-hmm. So it's been a great switch. The reason why I knew, it wasn't really like a clear decision, that, okay, it's time for me to go. It was more like a phase, I was thinking about, what I wanted to do. I wanted to transition more to, something finance related. I really, like numbers. I like, the markets and all that sort of thing. So I wanted to do something that was closer to aligned to that. It's not like I was actively looking by any means, but, this Fannie Mae role popped up. My manager right now is actually a former Darden grad a couple years before me. And so, he just called me one day, we were talking, and at this point I wasn't 100% sure I wanted to leave, but those talks happened over, 2 months or so. And during that time, there were like a couple interviews and things like that. And at the end of those 2 months, I was like, I really do think this is the right role for me to jump into. It checks kind of all the boxes that I'm looking for. And, that's when I decided to make the move. It was tough, and definitely I definitely wavered a lot. But it was like a long process and it was the right role for me. So that's why I decided to jump.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So it sounds like it was a little more emergent, it was a little more opportunistic.
That's right.
You didn't feel like you kind of tapped out in the consulting world, but it was a great opportunity.
Yeah.
Okay. So how have your consulting skills, that time at BCG, how has that helped you in your current role now?
Oh yeah. I mean, it's helped me a ton. A lot of times when people, whether it's like, clients or anyone who's interested, ask me about, the skills, they tend to skew towards the quant skills, right? The analysis, Excel and things like that. But, in reality, while those, definitely help, and those are definitely important, and you for sure use them, the things that have helped me the most tend to be the soft skills. So, things like stakeholder engagement, right? Being able to lead a project where you have, like 10 or 12 different stakeholders, being able to manage all of them, and actually push the project forward like effectively is a skill that needs to be learned and honed. And that's definitely helped me a lot. I think the second thing is, the ability to craft a story and dissect a problem. It's one thing to have, the analytical horsepower to be able to solve the problem, but that doesn't really help if you can't like tell the why or, tell the whole story behind it and why they should take your recommendation. Right. And so being able to, really go from beginning to end and, tell the story, talk about the analysis so it makes sense to everyone. That's also a skill that has really, really helped a lot. I would say those two things are the biggest differentiators that I took from BCG and apply now.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for sharing about your pathway to BCG, your time there, what it's been like for you after you've left. And in addition to your day job, you are a coach with us here at Management Consulted. You work with various clients who are interested in getting into one of the top firms, not only BCG, but across the board. So what's the process that you run your clients through to prepare?
Yeah. I mean, I get clients at different stages in their casing process, but, my favorite is to work with someone who has no experience with casing, right? Because then they don't have an opportunity to develop, bad habits or like, we don't have to backtrack and things like that. So, if I get, a client who, is new to casing, like, hey, I want to try out for consulting. I don't really know anything about the case interview. Like, can you help? The first thing I start off with is talking through, like spending a significant amount of time talking through like the flow and cadence of the case itself. The different components and how to transition between those components is huge. And that's easier to teach up front, before they start to really hone in on, like if I get an exhibit, how do I, go through that and all that sort of stuff? Because what I found is people can be really good at, the isolated pieces of the case. They can be good at structuring the problem, developing a MECE framework. They can be good at, reading exhibits and going straight into quant. But the case can get choppy and a little awkward if they don't know how to transition and don't have that flow down. So that's the first thing we go through. And then after that, dive into framework. You have to start off the case right. You have to have, a solid framework to kick off the case. And so that's where, I start first and talk through, the theory of it, like how to think about it, what goes through their mind as they're thinking about it, and then kind of like guide them, on their own path to being able to structure it. And then after that, I just kind of hone in on whatever, piece of the case they can use improvement in. Everybody is different. Some people are better at some things, others are better at others. And so, the process from there on out gets very, kind of bespoke depending on the person.
Absolutely. That customized approach where you assess the strengths and weaknesses of that person.
Yeah.
And try and get them proficient across the board.
That's right.
Right. Now, as you work with your clients and as you think about the recruitment process, in your experience, what are some of the top qualities that most successful candidates possess?
Yeah. So this kind of goes back to, the answer I gave about, what I got from BCG and how I apply it. But the two things that a successful candidate possesses, in my mind, are those soft skills that I spoke about earlier. And the second is creativity. With enough practice, everyone can learn how to case, right? Everyone, doing a framework, all the quant, all the math, that's very, very teachable. You can definitely teach that. The amount of time it takes for some people may differ, but I guarantee everyone can learn that. The soft skills and creativity are much, much harder, to teach. But those are things that can really differentiate you, during the interview process, right? I mean, as much as the interview is about, them assessing, your problem solving skills and things like that, they're also looking to see, do I want to work with this person, day in and day out, and there's no shortage of people, who can case. But it's much harder to find someone who can case well, who you would also want to spend a lot of time with, working together, who can see being on your team. So that is hugely important. The way that looks, or the way that manifests, within the case interview is, enthusiasm, engagement with the interviewer, different things like that. It truly is a soft skill. Second piece is creativity. So, within the case, it's like I talked about before, there's definitely a flow and a cadence, and there's, components of it. It's very structured, but creativity, you can really, really add a lot of value. Take the framework, for example. Frameworks generally look the same as far as structure. You're not really incentivized to do anything too crazy or unique because the interviewer doesn't really know how to assess it. And that's a huge risk in an interview, right? But, if you have, creative context underneath each bucket, the buckets can look the same as somebody else's. But if you have more creativity underneath, the interviewer will remember that, I think an overlooked piece of the case is the brainstorm, right? A lot of people, it's like a box to check more or less. But I think that significant time should be focused on the brainstorm, because if you come up with ideas that the interviewer, hasn't heard or hasn't thought of, that's an easy way for them to, finish up at the end of the day and remember your interview specifically. And it's a great way to add points and get the job.
Mm-hmm. There's this stereotype, this generalization that BCG is going to expect you in the interview process to be even more creative, quote unquote, than the other firms. Would you say that there's any truth to that?
Now, granted, I've never worked at, a Bain or McKinsey, but I would say, internally at BCG, creativity is highly, highly valued. Mm-hmm. There is a big incentive on being creative and coming up with creative ideas. And, the partner team or management is, in the case setting is definitely open to hearing things like that. So I felt very challenged to be creative and coming up with ideas and solutions. So I would guess that that's true.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, Ryan, I'm sure that there are people at this point who are wondering how they can get more involved, how they might be able to work with you directly. At this point in time, when are you often free, and how could they work with you?
Yeah. So normally I'm free, pretty early in the morning and evenings, during the weekday. I'm on the East Coast, so Eastern time. Mm-hmm. And then I have some availability, on the weekends as well. But if someone doesn't see some time slots that work, always feel free to reach out. You can email me at ryan@managementconsulted.com, and I'm sure we'll be able to find some time to be able to work together.
Absolutely. Ryan, we really appreciate you taking the time to share your journey and what you do here at Management Consulted. Thanks so much.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Want to grab some coaching time with Ryan? Make sure to check out his current coaching calendar in the link below. And all of our coaches are ex-MBB consultants and interviewers. They've been extensively vetted and they only coach with us here at MC. They'd love to help you mock through full interviews, drill in the areas you need extra help, or just sit with you and answer your questions. You can find a link in the show notes or read more about our offerings at managementconsulted.com. Also, do you have a question about breaking into consulting or anything related to the field? If so, we'd love to answer it on the podcast. Email a question, or better yet, send us a voice note to podcast@managementconsulted.com. Either way, make sure to include your name, location, and question. Send it to us, podcast@managementconsulted.com. We'll see you next time.